Hello, welcome to Creation Station. In this video I'm going to break down the Logic session for a song I recently recorded, Janky Rocks, and show you a heap of things that I learned and applied in making that video. If you're looking for some inspiration for your next song or some tips to speed up your Logic workflow, stick around, I'm sure you're going to find this useful. Hi, welcome back, thanks for joining me. So as I said, in this video I'll break down the Logic session for a song I just uploaded and show you a bunch of things that I learned or have applied in making this song. I'll also reference a lot of the videos that I found here on YouTube that I found helpful as well. I've put chapter markers throughout the video so you can jump to specific tips if that's what you're looking for. If any of this is helpful, please let me know in the comments down below, or if there's anything else you would like to know, let me know and I can make a future video on that. Let's get to it.
Okay, so the first tip I want to share is something that really helped my workflow, especially from a writing perspective, and that is capturing videos with system audio. Now, why is that important? Well, for me, I use the camera on the Mac often when I'm writing. If I've got a guitar riff or something I've just come up with, a little melody idea, I'm kind of prone to forget it. I'm not getting any younger, and that ain't easy to remember all the riffs, so I like to get the idea, sometimes the particular way I'm fingering it and things like that. Is the key to unlocking how I'm playing that riff, and if I don't get it there and then, it's probably lost to the ages. So anyway, to enable that, for years and years, I had different ways of trying to do it. Playing the noise loudly through the speakers and trying to pick it up through my phone, just to catch ideas and things like that. Through the Mac webcam, built-in webcam was the easiest way, but the sound was rubbish because it was just the sound of the twangy guitar, a la this. Versus now it sounds like this. So the way that I achieved that was actually I found a video by a bloke called Jay Crafton. Thank you very much, Jay. This is like a game changer for me. So all we do is download a thing called Black Hole. You need to go to a website for existential audio, Black Hole. So this is the website here. I'll put a link in as well. You need to register your email address, first name, last name, get a free download, right? Once you download it, you will need to change your system settings, or likely will need to allow it to install. Okay, so once you've downloaded Black Hole and got it installed, you need to come into your audio MIDI setup. So you can either click on that, find it through your utilities within your apps folder, and in your apps folder and in your utilities should find your audio MIDI setup, or even easier, press Command Spacebar to get your Spotlight search up. Audio, if you type audio, it should auto-complete to audio MIDI setup. Start that up. If you don't see this window, sometimes it doesn't, then you want to show audio devices. So if I hide it, I'll just show you quickly. Show audio devices, you get this window. Now what you need to do is create a new multi-out device. You can see I've already created one here. This is why this is working right now, but for the purpose of demonstration, click on the plus down the bottom here to create a multi-output device. Once you do that, you should see your audio interface being the first thing. If it's not, you need to have that first and then select the Black Hole 2-channel as the second. I'm not going to do that because otherwise it's going to break Logic because it's already running through this early version, but you would simply click on that. That would then give you something like this. You can rename it if you need to. You can see I did working multi-out device because it took so long to finally get this figured out the right way to do this, even after watching the video. But so there was a little elation in naming that the actual working multi-output device. Nevertheless, so once you've got that set up, you can get rid of that. In Logic itself, you need to come into your Logic Pro Preferences, Audio Preferences. And then in your audio preferences, you want your input device to be your sound card per normal. You want your output device to be that multi-out device that you just created. Then in Quicktime itself, you need to select, when you go to your recording window, just do a new movie recording. When you come into that, you need to have that set as the Black Hole as well. And if you do that, it will all work for you miraculously. Okay, so something I really like to do to get my workflow as quick and as efficient as I can is to have a template. Pretty important because that way you can open it up, good to go, rock and roll. All the sounds that you need are there. It's all organised in the way that you're used to working with. So you can see a few things here. I've got a number of track stacks here, so I like to do that to keep it fairly organised and allow me to get to a high level view of the project and keep it clean and easy to mix total. Also having sub mixes for my rhythm guitars, my lead guitars, my bass and my drums makes the mix process, even as I'm working along, making sure I've got a good sound all the way through. If I pop these open, these are all track stacks, and there's plenty of good videos out there on how to do this if you're not sure. You can see I've got one for tracking guitars, one for rhythm guitars, so left and right, full, mid is the way I like to have it. I may not use all of them always, but they're there ready to go and record parts whenever I'm ready. So the way I like to work is I use the tracking guitars just for roughing things and scratching ideas, and then also they're always good to have because every project I'll leave those there. So if I want to come back into a project later and jam along, I've got open tracks to do it, because as soon as you've got audio recorded on a track, if you plug in and try and input monitor on that track, you're going to be clashing with the recorded audio, obviously, so you need a clean, empty track. So having these means I can always jump into any of my projects, if I want to practice and brush up on them, if I want to throw more ideas in there at a later point, whatever it is. And then also if I'm messing about with the sounds, adjusting levels, it's not interfering with even a final mix that I've done on the rest of the guitars. So that's why I like to have the tracking guitars in there. I've got obviously my bass. I like to have a couple of tracks of bass so that I can mix and match. Usually what I'll do is record one and duplicate it. As opposed to guitars, you want to record separate tracks for all your guitars to get that nice thick chunk. Bass needs to be tight, so you don't want to be recording two separate bass lines. Or duplicating the part, you just want to copy it, and that's what I do, but that way I can process different sounds on the bass. I've got an Easy Drummer and a Logic Drummer, depending on what mood takes me. I can use either of those to process that. The other thing I like to have is my markers. So I use arrangement markers a lot, because that lets you very quickly arrange, and I'll show you in the final mix session how that works. And then the other thing I do is use the normal marker tracks. So you can click here in the marker tracks and create from regions. So if I was to just delete all of these, delete all of my marker tracks, that is, or even some of them, you can see. Now create markers from arrangement markers. It will copy all of these into my marker track. The reason that's useful is I can click on these to select their sections, whereas the arrangement markers doesn't allow me to do that. So that's really useful to have in the session as well. Also, I like to use project notes. So this button over here opens project notes, or Option, Command and P will also open the project note. But that area I can take notes, and I'll show you in the final session again the notes for this particular project. I might use that for putting some mixing notes. It might be some songwriting, development notes, chord progressions, scale choices, things like that. Might put final lyrics in there in some, if they have lyrics. But it's certainly a very useful place to pop any of that information, so I like to make use of that as well. Another thing that is very useful to do is to customize your toolbars. So if you're not seeing this section in particular, what you can do is drag down this part here to reveal this. This is particularly useful. These buttons in particular I find for arranging are super useful. Repeat section, cut section, insert section, or insert silence. So if I set my cycle range across any of these regions, and as I said, I can use these marker tracks and the back arrow to do that. So let's say I select this verse. Let's suppose I want to repeat that section. I can just hit the repeat section button. That will copy all the regions within that as well, which is really useful. I can cut a section. I can insert a section. So that'll insert a previously copied section. I can cut that back away, or I can insert silence. So these are really useful to very quickly throw ideas together and arrangements together. Hence I like to keep that. I also like to keep these arrangement markers preset, because that way I've got all those standard sections, and as I'm starting to put ideas, I can start thinking about where they might fit, and makes it quicker to throw the jigsaw puzzle together, as it were. The colouring I've also matched to the colouring in Easy Drummer, because Easy Drummer has preset colours for the different sections in the song creator. As you can see here, verses are blue, choruses are purple. They're the main two. intros, outros, fills, etc. orange. Hence I've matched my arrangement markers to those colours just to keep everything sort of synced and make it a bit easier to see what's what. Okay, so for this project I want to try something a little different and seek some inspiration in the Logic drummer. It's actually quite fully featured, so you get to pick your drummer over here in the library. I went with this guy, Logan Retro Rocker, which sounds a bit like me, so it seemed appropriate. I also used the producer kits, which give you a lot more flexibility in terms of the mix, but we'll come to that. So in terms of the arrangement and tips for this video, one thing I found that is handy, so you can see you get your drummer parts here. They look a little different to a MIDI part. They're specific to the Logic drummer, but you get this XY pad to move your dimension between soft and loud and simple and complex. So I could cut my parts up, and in some places you can see that I found cutting it even down to each bar, and then I could change those parameters for each bar to help me ramp sections up. So at the end of the intro here, I want to have my fills and the drums really building up. So you can see through these parts, if you have a look at the fills dial over here, it builds through each part, right? So it ramps up, and then you can see that part's getting a lot busy with the fills. So just to give you a quick idea. And then where you need to, you can also break it out into MIDI. So if I scroll way over here, there's a particular part over here where I actually dialed in some specific MIDI just to meet exactly what I wanted to do here. I had a bit of a stop-start kind of thing going on. So that I could dial that in specifically. You can go with that. So it's quite flexible in that regard, which is really handy. Okay, so on to talking about the songwriting. So the idea with this one was to branch out a little bit, do something different. So in this case, I was trying to write a rock song rather than metal that I normally do. So what I had in mind in terms of a direction, a bit of a brief to start with, was something like you might hear in a mountain bike video, someone shredding down a hill, that kind of high energy sort of rock vibe. That was what I was looking for. So thinking about that, what I started with was this guitar riff. So built that up, came up with a second part to put along with that. But then the other sort of point of inspiration was kind of an octave effect on the guitar and coming up with that. So added that in with a bit of a melody line. To get the verse and sort of build it up from there. Okay, so after the verse, came up with this pre-chorus idea. So something a bit different. It was kind of almost James Bondy, I sort of think, but which was kind of cool. And then that brings me into the chorus. But the chorus, I was a bit stuck, couldn't quite find the idea, so I ended up just singing it. I put a track in here with some effects on it, a bit of distortion, but you get something like this. It doesn't sound great, but it was just enough to get the idea sketched out first. It's a bit like roughing it out in, I guess if you're sketching something. So you get the idea, but from there I could figure it out on the guitar and take that forward from there. So another idea I was trying to employ a lot through this was this concept that I got from one of the Gear Gods videos, somewhere here, we'll link that. The idea of always having a top line and something to keep it interesting. So not all the way through this, because it's an instrumental especially, but I put a lot of effort into trying to make sure there was something interesting going on all the way through. And that actually led into some nice stuff in the bridge. So it's not quite a lead, but I guess melody line there as well, which was kind of cool. Okay, and then in terms of dressing it up, once I had it all written and recorded, is adding a bit of ear candy, just something to finish it off. So added a lot of transitions. So as with a lot of the sections, I've got a separate track stack down here with my effects on it. And so if I pop that open, you can see there's a whole raft of different things going on here. So I used this Nathan Larson video that was quite handy. 5 transition tricks pro producers use. Again, somewhere up there. Check that out. So a couple of the key ones, some reverse percussions going on here. So basically taking a MIDI drum part, bounce it down to an audio, then you can take the audio, reverse it. And so with a lot of them, what I actually did was reverse it in and out. So you can see here there's a reverse snare. If I just zoom in again, there we go. And if we put the focus on that, so you can see here, and if I solo it, so a reverse leading up and then running it forward after the reverse, so you get that cool in and out kind of effect. And if you put it in context of the whole mix, it's subtle stuff, but it's there in the background. Like I say, a bit of ear candy is nice. Some filter automation as well. So the idea there is taking a MIDI noise pump, there we are, this guy. So the MIDI part itself is just some straight noise, but run a high cut frequency through that. So if you have a look on the EQ as it plays back, so you can see as the part progresses, the high cut filter opens up and lets that noise through. So rather than just getting the straight noise on the part, sounds more like that. You put the filter over it and it opens up. So if I solo it, you get that effect. And then the other one is just a couple of rises. Got some sort of air impact hits, etc., particularly in the bridge here. So if we have a listen from this part. So it just adds a little bit more to that to make it a bit more interesting. So thanks, Nathan. Okay, so another concept from the Gear Gods video was also the idea of just keeping the parts interesting. So I really tried to just make the second time around through all the parts a little different and add some different dimensions. So particularly in the verse here, you'll hear a bit of a rise back into. So to sort of change a bit there to bring us back out of the chorus, and then second time through the verse here, I put a couple of stops in the drums just to make the rhythm a bit more interesting. And then in the second chorus, we get some guitar echoes, which was kind of fun to play around with. And then also added in some keyboards in that part. So again, got a track stack here for the keyboards. So you can see a bit of hard rock organ going on here. And similarly, just prior to that bit in the pre-chorus, we get a bit of electric piano. So all of that just helps to, keep things fresh and interesting and keep the ear drawn into what's going on as the thing goes through. Okay, so then onto the mixing. So I won't go through the whole mix, but just some of the key learnings that I took away from it, different things that I tried. So one is just in terms of workflow and the view. So what I did was break out the mixer. So one way to view the mixer when you're working in Logic is just press X and you get the mixer here in your arrange window. What I like to do is actually have multiple desktops, and then I can have a whole separate view just for my mixer like this. Okay, so you can set up the keyboard shortcuts for your mission control in this in your keyboard system preferences. So I have Control and Up to launch my mission control. If I launch mission control, you see up here I've actually set up 4 desktops, but you can click over on the plus here to create a new desktop. That'll add one to the end, and then you can use that. After you do that, within the preferences, you'll also get options to switch to those desktops. So I've got these configured as Command 1 through 4. That's useful because then I can grab a Windows component. So when I first break this out of Logic through the window, open Mixer, that will pop up here. But what I like to do is move it with that Control and 2 onto the second desktop, so that way I can just then use my Control left and right arrows to jet quickly between this and into mixer view. That's really handy. The other thing I really like, and what I kind of discovered this time around, despite using Logic for a really long time, that's really handy is if I'm clicked on any one of the channels here and I come into the mixer and then I use the single rather than the tracks view, that'll put the focus just on that one track. So in this case, I'm looking at my left guitar track, so I can see that track, but I can also see the full signal chain for that track. So in this case, guitar, it routes out to bus 5. So bus 5 is also here in the view, which is a reverb track, send track that I've got set up. Also the rhythm guitar sum track. And sorry, I've just made it change focus. Rhythm guitar sum track here is displayed as well because it outputs to that track, and you can see the output is bus 1, this is bus 1, and then bus 1 in turn goes out to the stereo out, so that's there, which in turn goes to the master. So you see the full track. The other one that's really handy for is the drums when I was working, because I use the producer kit. So if I click on the drums and then click back to single, now I see just the drums, but I see all the drums and I can work on those as well as their sends. So you see with the producer kits, it's actually really cool. This is all part of the default, but they create these submix or these bus channels as well. So there's a sub with some sub bass, an attack, so it's got an enveloper to create some more attack, a crunch with a bit of distortion on it, a pump track, so some extra compression going on there, and a snare track. So, the snare and kick send to, as you can see, those added buses. So you can get a lot more punch, and you can work with that to really dial in the sound of the drums to how you want it, and to work within your own mix. Okay, so then in terms of the actual mix, just a couple of things I want to call out. So in doing the EQ, one thing that I did, take a tip from Why Logic Pro Rules, awesome channel, got a lot of great stuff from there, but an approach to carving out some of the mud from the low end, which is to say adding some high pass filters. Pretty well all the channels you can see, even just in the thumbnails here, have a degree of low pass filtering going on them. And the way that I actually approach that, and the tip that was red hot from that, was when you're looking for where to dial this frequency in, if you're not sure, what you can actually do, turn that off for a moment, put a low pass filter, sweep it all the way down and have a listen to where the usable sort of sound ends, because that gives you a bit of a clue where you probably want to dial in your high pass filter. It's because you're cutting away things that just don't matter to the mix, and in doing so you're also removing some of that low energy, even though it may not display, you might not see it, and you may not actively hear it, but it can add up and the frequencies can multiply across multiple tracks. So that was quite important to keep things clean. Then I used some sort of mid cuts in a couple of places to tidy up the mix as well. Similar thing, just scraping away some of the mid. And the way I generally like to approach that is by, if I look at the guitar, for example, you can see some sort of specific cuts. I would tend to start with the drums and the bass and try and get the two to sit together. So I might intentionally make some cuts where there were particular elements of, say, the drums cutting through. So I knew where the punch of the snare was and the thump of the kick, and then I'd pull some of the other instruments out of the way. So rather than boosting something, cutting something else out of its way, just so the instruments all had room for each other. And I found that was fairly effective. Added some correction where required as we go through, but that was the main elements from the EQ that I applied to this mix. Okay, so to wrap up, just some thoughts and reflections, I guess, to help in terms of improving for my next mix. I think one of the first thoughts is I probably ran things a little hot on this mix, possibly had the faders, could have pulled them back a bit more and then run it into a master session rather than run it all in one. In this case, I just had my master bus with an easy mix mastering preset on it. The other idea would have been mixing down the parts so I wasn't using as many of the plugins, particularly reverbs and things like that. That was some advice from another channel I've been watching a bit lately, Frightbox Recordings. That some quite good advice in terms of when you approach the mix everything down, bounce out so you're not using your processors, your plugins. It minimises the impact on your CPU, but also you're sort of committing to the sounds within the mix. And then when you come to the mix, you're just trying to get them to sit together nicely. So I'm going to try that on the next session and see how that works. And probably means creating a dedicated mixing template as well to do that. and then probably some more time on the reverb. So I kind of let things get a little bit out of control as when I added some of the presets, particularly some of the effects. They preloaded some reverb channels and I didn't take the time to reroute them into ones that I'd already established. So a bit more focus on reverb to keep things a bit cleaner, and probably helps the CPU as well. So that's the final reflection. So thanks very much for watching. If you did find anything useful, please let me know in the comments below. If you have any further ideas, other critiques, feedback, love to hear that as well. Let me know. If any of this was useful, be grateful to know about that as well. Otherwise, have a good one, and I'll see you in the next video. Cheers. Bye.